Hello, and welcome to the 2019 edition of How to Get into Oxford University. And with me today, we have Lucy Gorn.
Hello.
Who's joining us to talk about step-by-step process from A to Z on how to get in. And Lucy herself is a graduate of history for her undergraduate at Magdalen College, and then did a Masters of Studies in Modern History, but be aware that modern history at Oxford starts at 1680, so it's more like medieval history, but I'm sure she can talk about that. Lucy, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Cool. All right, Lucy. So, what is the process? What is the first thing? First of all, when are the deadlines?
Okay, so the most important deadline to remember is October 15th, the year before you plan to attend Oxford. So, say you're currently in the UK system and you're in year 12, you would want to apply by October 15th of your year 13 year. So the year before you're going to university, and it's the same day every single year.
And first of all, are international students allowed to apply? And if so, is it the same date for internationals as it is for UK applicants?
Yes, this is a deadline everybody has to stick to. I believe it's 6 p.m. GMT time as well. So it's you can check the deadline and the exact time on UCAS website, but it's the exact same deadline for everybody.
Okay, so the deadline for Oxford application is 15th of October, 6 p.m. London time, when you're in your last year of school. So if you're hoping to start at Oxford in September 2020, you need to apply by 15th of October 2019. Okay, great. And Lucy, how do you apply?
Okay, so the first step is to complete your UCAS application. So that's the actual application form. So that comprises of a personal statement. You provide personal details, your work history, your education history. Your teachers also fill out a reference that gets sent along with your UCAS form. So that's the first thing. And then once that's complete, there are additional steps for Oxford. You will probably need to send in additional work. For instance, when I was applying for my history course, I had to send in a history essay I'd done as at school for the tutors to have a look at. I also had to sit an entrance test, which is known as the HAT, the History Aptitude Test. You'll probably sit this at your school, and you normally take that in late October, early November.
And just to jump in on that, on your screen right now is a link to a separate video describing what a UCAS application is. So in that video, in great depth, we're going through every single step of UCAS. So take a look at that if you're interested.
The other important thing to remember for UCAS is that you send that to every single university. So you can pick up to 5 universities, and you can only pick Oxford or Cambridge. And then the same form gets sent to everyone. So that personal statement where you detail why you really want to go to university and why you want to study a particular subject is going to be read by the admissions tutors at Oxford, at Warwick, at UCL, whichever universities you've chosen. Okay,
and Lucy, a lot of the comments from the video we did for this last year on how to get into Oxford, the 2018 edition, a lot of the comments have been, do you need to go to private school? Do you need to know someone? Do you need to have rich parents to get in? Like, what's your experience in this?
So my personal background is I went to a state school. That was for the entirety of my education, and got in with, I did have some help for tutoring and maths, but that was about it. So it's not something you need. It's just, I suppose, it can seem very scary at first sometimes, and it's quite different from the other universities in that you also have interviews and so on. So having someone else who's gone through that experience actually explain it to you, so it's not this scary, opaque institution that a lot of the time you read about in the press, it seems to be. I'd say that's helpful, but it's definitely not necessary. And you really shouldn't be put off by the thought that only a certain type of person goes to Oxford.
Okay, Okay, that's really interesting. And just to add from me, so I'm an international student originally. I'm half Indian, half Ukrainian. Yes, I was educated in a private school in the UK, but was able to get a place at Oxford. And generally speaking, I believe there is no difference whether you're domestic or international student, and you're treated the same. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can actually find Oxford has a policy on international students, and it doesn't have a quota except for medical students about how many internationals they can accept or not accept, which I know some other universities do have.
Yeah, and just to add, I think the thing to be aware of, it's not the fact that international students are discriminated against. It's more the fact that international students often lack understanding of how the system works, and that's why there are fewer talented international students get in compared to home students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in terms of actually getting in, so Oxford will have many talented applicants with great GCSEs, great A levels or IB or APs. How do you actually get in? Like, what makes somebody stand out?
Okay, so they'll be looking for a few different things. When you first submit the form and they do their first round of assessing people, they'll be looking at your education background. So if you've gone to school in the UK, you'll have GCSEs and you'll also have predicted A-level or IB grades. This is something they'll definitely be paying attention to. So for GCSEs, you want probably mostly A's and A stars, or if in the new grading system, that'll be 8s and 9s. It's okay if you've got the occasional one that isn't is maybe a B or a C, but you want to be mostly having top marks there, because they'll be looking at that as an indicator of how well you're going to go on to do. And again, you'll also want to have strong predicted grades, because they're wanting to make sure that you're going to be able to meet the offer that they'll give you. So they'll be looking at that. They'll read your teacher references at that time as well. If you sent in any submitted work, they'll also be having a look over that. They'll read your personal statement. And then lastly, if you took any admissions tests, they'll be looking at your marks there. So they're the things they'll be considering at that point. And then based on those, they'll make a decision as to whether they're going to call you to interview. So it's normally about mid-November to early December, you'll start to hear whether you've made it through to the next round and whether you've been called to interview at Oxford.
And interview, this is this sort of famous, mysterious part that a lot of people, really scared about, and it's there's a lot of mystery about it. So what actually happens during the interview?
So it really depends on the college and the course, but mostly it's a very academic interview. So it's not like an interview you've perhaps had for a job, or even if you're applying to the US and that sort of college interview. It's entirely based around your subject. So for me, for instance, in one of my interviews, I turned up 20 minutes beforehand and I had an extract to read over, and I also had a source to look at. And this source was like a medieval picture. So I had 20 minutes to think about that. And then I went in and I basically discussed them, and the tutors were asking me questions and I had to try and reach for different answers. And that's the sort of thing you'll be doing in any of the interviews. You'll probably, for maths, there might be some problems that you have to go through together, and then they'll throw in some new information and see how you adapt to that. But it will mostly be trying to see how your brain works. And whether you are able to cope in the situation. That's basically a tutorial, which is how they teach at Oxford.
And just to add on everything that Lucy has said, is a point that a lot of people miss, is that Oxford and Cambridge and maybe one or two other universities are different to the majority of universities, that Oxford employs this tutorial system, which is where you have lectures, you go to lectures, and then you have an essay to write and sort of a couple dozen books to read. And then once a week, you will meet up with your tutor, who can be a world expert in this particular field, and then you have to present your problem sheet or your essay to him or her. And then normally you have another student in the room for an hour. This tutor basically destroys you and makes you feel really bad about your work and sort of why you're completely worthless and sort of why this work is not quite good enough. And so this one-on-one intensive sort of ping-pong session is what makes Oxford different. So the interview process is often there to see which students can cope with that, especially having come through schools which do not operate like this, and who cannot. So you can often prepare yourself for the interview by just simulating these interviews, with your best friend, your dog, your mum and dad, and just prepare at home.
Yeah, practicing talking through things is always good. Particularly for something like maths, you probably never really had to discuss a solution out loud. That's not really how I remember my maths lessons going, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. Lucy, and just wrapping up, so you've done your interviews, you've gone through everything. When do you find out the decision?
So you'll have your interviews, and these, depending on your subject, could be done and dusted in a single day. If you do an art subject, you could be kept around for almost a week sometimes. So I think I turned up Tuesday evening and I finally was able to leave Oxford Friday afternoon. And then basically you would then hear mid-January as to whether you've gotten a place or not, because the tutors will have made their decisions by the time you leave. You are told that you can leave and they've done with the interviews.
Okay, and then is that it? Sort of you just have an offer and you turn up, or are there any more exams to do?
So you're normally given what's called a conditional offer. In the UK at least, you normally then sit your A-level exams in that summer, so you'll be given an offer based on the fact that you'll have to get, say, 3 A's, an A-star AA or A-star A, or also maybe a certain IB grade. So the offer will be based on you meeting those conditions. If you've already taken A-levels or IBs or finished your high school education, it would then be an unconditional offer.
Okay, great. Lucy, last question. What would be your top 3 tips for prospective applicants when they're applying to Oxford?
Don't be discouraged by, I suppose, the stereotypes. There are lots of different people at Oxford. The most important thing is if you're passionate about a subject. That's what the tutors are really looking for, and that's what is going to make a compelling application. So they want a student that, yes, you're very bright, but they're really excited to study their particular subject, and they're just very passionate about it. So that's the main thing. Rather than the fact that you just want to go to Oxford, you want to go to Oxford to study X, Y, Z, basically.
Okay, so I think we can break that up into 3 parts. First of all, don't be discouraged. You have nothing to lose by submitting an application. Secondly, pick something you love and you're truly passionate about, and apply for your passion. And I think the third one is just work hard.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks. Hope you enjoyed our videos. You can click here for more, and you can click right here to subscribe.